Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to be here today. Come talk to you about where we are and what's going on and where I think we're headed over the course of the remainder of this term. I think today is actually midterm day in the session. We're at the halfway point, so from here on, I'm sure it's going to be smooth sailing and straight downhill. No problems at all. It's as easy as it comes. No, I'm joking. Obviously, this is a very difficult session. It was a difficult session on day one. It only became more difficult with the explosion and oil leak in the Gulf and what we're going to be facing in time requirements of particularly the members of the administration, but also the legislature, and being pulled in different directions because, of course, the legislative session clock is ticking. We have to deal with all we have to deal with along with the oil spill. So it's going to be a very hectic remainder of the session, but one that I think shows promise for a number of positive things. You know, we started this session out looking at a major budget shortfall for next year. Got here and realized we have a budget shortfall for this year, and are also taking into account the budget situation for the 11-12 year, which of course is really 2 years away from now. You all have heard me say before, I'm going to touch on this real briefly before I talk about the major topic that I'd like to discuss today. There are 4 areas in the state budget that must be taken under control if we are going to solve this budget problem for the long haul. Healthcare reform is mandatory, and on that front, we're doing a number of different things. Privatizations in a number of public institutions will drive costs down. The Earl K. Long agreement with Lady of the Lake saves us significant capital dollars and brings about, we think, will be far greater quality care long term in that particular physical plant for sure. And then also, but also given the opportunity for greater teaching and greater service here in the Baton Rouge area. Excuse me, we're looking at a number of other issues revolving around national health care as it comes in and begins to impact Louisiana. The Obamacare is going to cost the state in the long run, and I think that's an assumed point of the program. What's interesting about it, though, is it's taken a Democratic president to, in all likelihood, get Louisiana out of the hospital business, because the Obama administration is, as a part of funding federal health care, pulling back on disproportionate share, or at least a big chunk of disproportionate share, and that's the federal funding mechanism by which we fund charity hospitals and the hospital system here. And so they're taking that away at the federal level. It's going to force us in a fairly short period of time, probably over the next 4 years or so, to make hard decisions about what is our role in the healthcare delivery system. Is it like every other state that we would simply be a funder of the state matching its federal dollars to the private system, or are we going to have to raise enormous amounts of taxes to maintain the existing public system? All that's going on in healthcare. In higher education, the second area that we must address, we're moving on a number of different fronts there. The one board bill is stalled in committee. That's my bill, but it's something that we are still working on, trying to figure out what we can do with consolidation of governance and how that would benefit the systems as a whole. The GRAD Act is moved out of committee and is moving to appropriations and then onto the floor, where I'm beginning to pick up more and more support for the GRAD Act every day. I think that people are coming to recognize the issues that are involved in that, and that causing performance is something we must do if we're going to change the outcomes in higher education. And in return, funding that properly is critical. And we're looking at a number of other issues in higher education and trying to mitigate short-term cuts. But the big issue in higher education in the budget is the fact that we're losing the ARRA money, the American Reinvestment Act, Recovery and Reinvestment Act money, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that over the long haul and the structural or restructuring of higher education. The GRAD Act does not, by any means imaginable, make up for what we're going to be losing in federal funds. I mean, we're losing almost $300 million in federal funds in the 11-12 year. The GRAD Act, if it's fully implemented on time and everybody participates, would generate somewhere around $6 million in additional dollars to colleges. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's certainly not meant to replace the money that's we're losing out of the federal system. And so restructuring of higher education is on the horizon as well. The third issue that we have is the number of employees. We are at 125% of the Southern Regional average in number of employees, excluding the hospitals. That's about 17,000 more employees than the Southern Regional average. You add in the hospital system and you pick up another 12,000 employees. So there's about 29,000 more employees in Louisiana than there are in comparable southern states, or I shouldn't say comparable southern states, in the Southern Regional average. And so that is an issue that we have to deal with. How can we be more efficient? How do we transfer out of having that many employees in a reasonable way to take care of the people who are working for us now, and either looking for retirement or moving into retraining of people? All of those issues are on the table. Positions are being eliminated in this coming budget. About, I believe, 3,000 positions instead of 2,700 to 3,000 positions within the budget are being eliminated, mostly through attrition. And I continue to see that being the primary means of eliminating positions. But in this budget horizon, we may end up having to do more than living by attrition. And I think that's something that the administration and the legislature are going to continue to work on. And then the fourth issue, which is what I really want to talk about today, is the retirement issue. Retirement is a major cost for the state fisc, and impacts so many people in this state who are either retirees from state government or some state system, or are in the system now and looking forward to retirement. To give you some numbers, the scope of the systems, there are today 114,135 retirees in the 4 state systems. That's state employees, teachers, school employees, state police. There are 164,565 active employees that are contributing into that system today. So it's a grand total of about 280,000 people, just short of that, who have some interest in the retirement systems. The size of the systems are enormous. Combined, they make up approximately $23 billion in investments in Louisiana. Lasers has $8.3 billion. The teachers has $12.7 billion. School employees have $1.4 billion. State troopers or state police have $400 million in investments in their assets that they take to invest and make money to make retirement benefits. This is a problem that we have to address this session, is dealing with the investments that are being handled by the retirement systems, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But over the last year, we've had a very bad return in these 4 systems. Lasers, and I'm going to read off some numbers here and then I'll just talk. Lasers lost $1.44 billion. Teachers lost $3.17 billion. School employees lost $294 million. And state police lost $63 million for negative returns of 19.6, 22.3, 16.9, and 19% respectively. I don't believe in looking at one-year numbers because the markets fluctuate. Last year we certainly had the collapse, and it was one of the worst years on record for many investors, and everybody who has a 401k or looks at making investments understands that last year was a bad year. So I went and asked, let's look at the 10-year returns, for the 4 systems. Now, recognize that basically to break even, they need to make an 8.25% rate of return in lasers and teachers, and a 7.5% return in school employees and troopers. Okay? The 10-year average return, and these are gross returns, this is without having fees pulled out, gross returns for lasers was 4.89%. For teachers was 4.49%. For school employees was 3.91%. And for state police was 4.43%. For every percentage point gap there means additional unfunded accrued to be picked up to make sure that the retirees in the state are honored by receiving their retirement benefits over a very long period of time, not just in year 1 or the current year, but over 40 years. And this imbalance over a 10-year return